I was in Italy at the time, still studying, and this ferocious war, which is very close to home, happening. So that influenced me in for the topic and what I wanted to do with animation later on.
Hello folks, Richard Smythman here. So today I bring you a conversation with director Cinzia Angelini. Cinzia got her start as a 2D and then CG animator at DreamWorks before transitioning into story and then becoming a director in 2021 with her short Mila. Cinzia has an incredible tenacity about her, and she's just a real testament to when you believe in yourself and you're prepared to put in the hard work that you can achieve anything. So without further ado, it's my great pleasure to bring you Cinzia Angelini. So I want to talk about Mila
Okay.
to get things going. I think Mila stands as a pretty unique project for many reasons. Can you tell us a little bit about it and a little bit about the history of how it came to be?
Sure. I think it goes with my a couple of things that intersected along the years. My experience as a young adult, teenager, with the Balkan War that it was happening in the 90s across, the Mediterranean Sea. I was in Italy at the time, still studying, and this ferocious war, which is very close to home, happening. So that influenced me in for the topic and what I wanted to do with animation later on. And then also, and then was later on stories of my mom that were linked to that, even if we were talking about World War II. So that was the part that really influenced my choice for doing a short film that was talking about war. And the other was my desire to move into story. I started as a 2D animator, eventually moved into CG after, all the studios in the 2000s wanted to move into CG. So I went through 18 years of animation, but then I really wanted to direct. And the best thing you can do is to move into the story department and start writing stories and doing boards, and that's you're kind of directing when you're storyboarding in a sense. So I did that, and I had a gap. It started actually at the studio with volunteers during a downtime, and then I had a gap year when my second kid arrived, and also it was 2008 when the financial crisis happened. So I basically stayed home for a year, and that was actually the best thing that could happen because I finally had time to work on my story portfolio, and the story that I already started with a group of people at the studio was the one that really attracted that group of people. So people started to emailing me, "Are we going to do Mila?" And how? I don't have a studio. I don't have a budget. How are we going to do? And friends and colleagues say, "Oh, I can model. Over the weekend, I can do some boards, blah blah blah," and it just got a life of its own in an incredible and fantastical and surreal way. And 10 years later, we finally finished it. Of course, it took 10 years because on a volunteer basis, as you know, it takes time to turn things around. People have their lives and their jobs and deadlines. And so, but overall, at the end, we had more than 400 people that contributed. That's why Mila's credits are, yes, from 35 countries. And one of it, and fantastic and very important, it's you, that you co-directed with Alexandra Kavanova. So
Well, thank you. No, I guess just for those listening, I was for a period of time one of the art directors on Mila. And I got to say, when you approached me, I think it was probably about 2012. I think we were at Duncan
11,
Studio.
I think 11,
2011,
12.
maybe
Yeah,
around
maybe
there.
11. Is it?
Yeah, and I remember like that initial conversation. You were like, "Oh, got this project, this short." You did call it a short. Now, for what it's worth, this is a 20-minute short. May not have been at the time, but I thought, okay, short. This will take up 6-8 months maybe of my time, and so I was all on board. And I think I tapped out at about the third year.
But like you're established, the look, and you help so much with all the students. We were like having, remember those
It
evening
was
classes,
fun.
and it was fun, and
Yeah.
it was kind of the spirit of Mila. Of course, we had a combination of professionals and very experienced people like yourself, and many of the head of departments, and then a lot of people that were either starting their career or still studying. So it was a mix of, and it's hard when you work like that to keep, the quality and the consistency, and but slowly but surely, we
But
did it.
not only that, I think that the ambition and the scope of the project was also kind of unprecedented for a short, because I think generally speaking, the idea is let's keep it to as few sets as possible, minimal characters, and we'll be able to focus our energies. But Mila it's essentially a 20-minute feature quality, not only in quality but in scope. Right, you've got pre-war Trento, and then you've got post-war or happening during war. So everything had to be modeled twice.
Yeah,
Right,
and
and so there was a massive undertaking. Now, so you started writing that around 2007-ish?
yeah, something like that. Yeah. Mhm.
And did you know at that time it was going to be a 20-minute short, or were you thinking a shorter, kind of more modest time
I
frame?
think a bit shorter maybe, but I didn't really think too much about the length. I was naive that way. I think it happened because, I was, learning as I was going at the same time with you guys, and being a bit naive and dreamy kind of person, in the sense that, and when I set a goal and I want to do something, I'm very hard-headed. So I usually go again like a bit Don Quixote, kind of like, I want to do that. Let's do it. It's impossible. Let's do it again. It's fine. Type of attitude. Otherwise, I think it's impossible to do these kind of things if you go in with like a calculated kind of expectation. So the first iteration of Mila, I bordered it, even if I was kind of green at the time in terms of boards, but it was very useful for me to really like get to understand what I wanted to say. And then one of the best thing was to actually, and I think it's a good advice for anyone that wants to write their own thing, and they could board, to detach themselves and give it to somebody else to board it, so that that the script is clear because they board it for what you want. Or if there is something that is not, you have like an honest opinion of a professional that will tell you, it's not very clear this page, what you want to say. So it's a great way of placing the script and confronting yourself with somebody that is really invested in what you're doing because they're boarding it. But they might have a different, because especially because it's a very personal story, and I played it in my head so many times. You tend to assume it's clear for everybody else when it might not.
Yeah, I think it's useful though that you were able to board the first version yourself to kind of give, at least if for no other reason, to be able to give a storyboard artist a very clear kind of path on what it is that you're expecting. So that was, I think, probably a great plus. So we get to a point. Yeah. So I came on board around 2011, helped, I think, with most primarily with the asset creation, and then Alexandra came in and kind of took over from there. But at some point, you've got 400 people working on this thing and not only 400, like 400 people in a single building is a tricky proposition.
Yeah.
400 people working from home with,
Yeah.
and then with all the ambiguity of schedules and when they may or may not get something done, because, for everyone that was volunteering, it's like there's other things, priorities, life priorities that kind of, I'll get to Mila later. I got to get this other thing done. Was there a point during the production where you felt overwhelmed by it, or felt like you had taken on too much, or was thinking possibly of abandoning it?
Absolutely. Everything that you just mentioned. It's like multiple times. But what makes the difference is the people you're surrounding yourself with. That when you're down, they'll pick you up. Andrea Ems, if you remember, she was part of that group of students, and she was already obviously brilliant in organizing, and so I asked her to come on board as a producer, and she was with me and still is, across the years. I'm saying still is because we are looking for distribution in the US, so but we can talk about that later. It's a long, when you go into a project like this, it feels like it never ends, not even when you're done. Then you have like years of festival circuit, and then when you're done, you're probably years of finding distribution, because short are not really something that any major platform would run to, and I wish things would change in the future. We'll see. Yeah, so surrounding yourself, going back to your question, with the great people, and then your own family, of course, so the first support system, that believes in it and is there for you and helps you. And because as I was doing Mila, I was working full time, and I had 2 kids, small kids. So, and if you don't have a support system, just forget it. Don't even start, because it's going to be quite impossible. And then you have your foundation, your family, and then your circle of friends and collaborators and the people working with you on Mila. And they would, and you pick them up when you're down. They're like, oh my God, it's impossible. No, come on, we can do it. We find a way. And then Valerio is the owner of Pixel Cartoon. That was the first actually person on board. I saw him in 2008 or 9 in Annecy. I don't remember. We went to school together in Italy, and I saw him, and I pitched him the idea of doing this crazy. I already started a little bit with some colleagues and friends, but I needed like a studio to store the files, and somebody that was physically there for me in that sense, and help coordinate and so on. And I pitched him the story, and Valerio said, okay, and he's also from Trento, and he said, okay, let's do it. And I think the good beer, that helped. I think I don't remember which beer he was drinking, but it definitely helped into his decision to jump on board right away.
So Pixel Cartoon were the first studio to get to obviously be on board, but then what, about 2/3 of the way through, you were able to get more support from other studios, right?
Yes, then Pepe Valencia came on board, helping with the previous. So I had a few little studios, smaller studios, that were there to support, but the pipeline was remote because everybody was remote, and it was very volatile. And remember that this is like the 2009, 10 on years. We did, we were having meetings on Skype 0.1. So there was no Zoom, there was no Google Meet, there was nothing of that. So we were really the trailblazer in that sense. And that helped because he attracted journalists that started writing about this crazy group of people doing this impossible thing, all remote. Nowadays, remote is like something we use like multiple times a day. At the time, working remotely, if you remember, studios giving you even storyboards, there was a no-no.
Well, it's something I hadn't considered was it was probably the first virtual studio. Like,
It was.
yeah, because
It was.
it really did coincide with the technology evolving at the time. I remember, yeah, we would get on Skype calls, but it was, I don't remember a situation where I'd worked in a virtual environment like that before. And so, yeah, it was kind of an intro. And who would have known actually when you started it that the technology was actually going to kind of grow in tandem with this project? Because obviously, without those tools, it wouldn't have been possible. Yeah, it's hard enough to convey an idea through, even through Skype, let alone trying to get those same notes across on email. What was the name of the studio that ended up helping at the end?
At the end, Cinesite came on board. I was working at Cinesite. So basically, it happened because I always promoted Mila as much as I could because it was helping, first of all, recruiting people that would come on board volunteering. And we were always, me and Andrea, be very careful in giving back as much as possible because we were very sensitive about people's time, their own time. So like what you did, and you were giving back to students and teaching them, or they would be able to use portfolios, the assets for their portfolios. That is something that really attracted many people because, as you know, when you start, you might have you might be starting, in the big studios, and the first couple of years you can't show anything. So if they are looking for another job, they have nothing.
Yeah, so Cinesite comes on board. That was for the final push, wasn't it, to kind of get this thing out the door?
Yeah, it was. And then basically, so going back to how they came on board, basically, I was constantly promoting, and we did also a Kickstarter. And when I was promoting that to get some money to basically pay for electricity and, not much, how much a film at this quality could cost. So it was just, but anything was helping, of course. So I would, I've been here already for many years, so I knew many people in the big studios. So they would invite me very nicely to share basically how we were doing it. At DreamWorks, we went to Illumination, for example, and Illumination is where Dave Rosenbaum saw it, and then he eventually became the chief creative officer at Cinesite. And when I moved to Cinesite, moved remotely because I was working from LA, but I started boarding and developing films with them. He invited me to show, the work in progress, because it was a work in progress for many years, to the studio, and they loved it. It happened that they had a gap in between two films, The Addams Family 1 and 2, and the Vancouver crew was basically out of work. They didn't want to get rid of the, core group. And so it was a perfect thing for them, and they were very nice to offer to take on board Mila and do it in Vancouver, meaning finishing up with a few other, a little bit of animation that did quite a bit, like probably 15%, and cleaned up. It helped with finalizing, financing the rig. It was Nate Barnard was the VFX super, and I remember always it was like a leap of faith in both sense, because they could not work with the volunteers. It was not just going to work with a pipeline. So it was either we were not going with Cinesite and stayed volunteer, and probably, I don't know if we would have finished, honestly, or everything was going to be moved to their pipeline. So it was on their side, it was a big leap of faith, because it was a huge undertaking, because, they had to fix a few things. And the hair, they had to redo all the hair because it was not working with their pipeline. So it was a big deal for Cinesite. And I'm so grateful that they, decided to go with it, definitely not to make money out of it, as you know, but to help. And they really believed in the film and the message that, as we know, is relevant nowadays again and again. And they basically, we said, okay, let's do it. And when you have a group of two crazy people at the same time in a way that can do fantastic things. So we were a bit like, okay, let's do it. And they jumped on board and there to do. So it was about 10 months of full-time job for the crew in Vancouver to adjust for a big studio, adjust to the pipeline, to implement the assets and make it workable for their pipeline. And that they did basically, except for one sequence, they did all the lighting, effects, class simulation, and finished up a little bit of the animation. So they're a huge part of Mila. And it was in a way nice that a big studio, I pitched Mila to so many studios, and everybody said basically no, because they were not interested in doing a short film about a kid caught in the middle of war. Like Disney would not be interested, Warner Brothers will not be interested. I understand, it doesn't make sense business wise. It's not their business. It's fine, but it was nice to find a big studio like Cinesite at the end that came on board and helped finish. And at the end of those 10 months, we actually had to go back remote. So I started remote. I finally find a studio, and then because of COVID, we ended up finishing remote with Mila. So it was destined to be a remotely produced project.
Kind of nice though, in a way, that you had to, you finished the way you started.
Yeah.
It feels kind of in the spirit of it. You bring up a good point though, like earlier about, working with such, obviously a lot of professionals working on it, but a lot of people getting their start looking for, as you said, like proper experience and assets that they can show, right, in a portfolio and that. And I think that it does add an extra layer of complexity, because it's like, not only are you working with a group of volunteers, but you're working with a group of people that for many of them, it's the first thing they've ever worked on. They don't understand pipelines. They don't understand file management, asset management, and all the different elements that come with it. And so I've got to imagine, like, if you're, a TD on Mila, and you're receiving, Maya files, and every one has got a quirkiness to it. When it came to Cinesite, and then they're cobbling all of that together, not only having to change things and re-rig things for their pipeline.
No. It was crazy. I mean, they did a fantastic job, and of course they were able to script the fixes. Basically, they had to work on tools specific. Otherwise, we had close to 300 assets. It's because, like you said before, it's not the typical short one location to characters that you might want to do with this situation where it's all volunteer, and out of school or whatever. You want to do very simple type of story, or complicated story, but simple locations and characters interaction. Mila was multiple locations, 10 characters, multiple looks before and after war, like you said, and it was a huge project, really, really ambitious project.
So with all of that said, I think, obviously hindsight and the experience that you gained on that was incredibly important, and I don't doubt you learned an awful lot. Looking back in hindsight now, what do you think you would do differently?
Well, it was very, I don't know, because it was very, very hard to at times find the people you needed. So for some department, it was easier, like animators. I never really had too many issues finding animators. But for example, for a pipeline TD or pipeline supervisor or hair and cloth simulation, or rigging as well, it was so hard to find people. But I don't know what I could have done more in terms of finding people. And at the end, we had so many, at times during specific times of the production, I had to turn away a lot of people. We had too many people coming to us. So we have 400 that are credited, and some did one asset and some did stayed for years. So we have full credits and partial credits, and so we try to be fair to everybody. And we have 400 people plus, so I did turn away many people, but um, I'm not sure if I'm answering very well to your question. I don't know what I would have done more. Probably trying to connect with sponsors like Autodesk before. They came on board in 2018 and gave us all the licenses we needed, and it was fantastic. Maybe, looking back, I could have connected with them sooner. But you never know. Sometimes it's the moment. It's just the right moment at the right time, and the stars align, and there you have it. Yeah, I honestly don't know. I mean, it's a trick question. Maybe if I,
No, it's interesting. Like I thought, like you might say, well, I'll make it 2 characters, and they'll be like,
no,
it'll be 3 minutes long.
no, Richard, it's me. I'm crazy that way. No, I would not change that. I'm very, yeah.
Well,
No,
that's
I know,
good.
I should have probably simplified a few things, but probably I could have simplified a few things.
But it would be a tough story to tell without that level of complexity, really.
Yeah,
To some degree,
would. Yeah, it would, absolutely.
It's been really well received. Got an Oscar nomination, right, in the short film category?
No, we never got an Oscar nomination. No, it was on the long list, but
For contention.
it was on the list, but we did not get the nomination. No, and that's maybe that's one of the things I would do differently. Now that you touch on that, when you go into the festival circuit, it's fine, it's manageable, but the Oscar campaigning, it's a whole different beast. So you need so if anyone it's out there with a good film that has potential, investing more into finding people that do that for a living, finding agencies that are out there to take films and promote them. Of course, they don't do that for free. So investing more. I did invest, into promotion and everything, but so much I could do to make it really visible for an Oscar campaign. You need to invest, I think, quite a significant amount of money to do that. It's just the way it is. And one thing that I would do differently that could help anyone that is out here, we decided not to release it on YouTube or Vimeo or whatever during the campaign. There are like a couple of weeks during the campaign where basically you can release it and it's okay because you're already pre-approved. So if you go through the Oscar, run, ask for when those 2 or 3 weeks are okay, and then you close the link. Otherwise, you're going to jeopardize your possible distribution deals later on. So you can't leave it out there unless you don't care. You just leave it on YouTube. That's another story. But you need to look at the regulations very closely because the Academy has very strict regulations in terms of visibility. But there are that window we didn't use, and we should have used it. Things might have turned out differently if we used it. So that's one probably of the things. If you ask me, now that you ask me, actually, that would be the thing I would do different for sure.
Where can people see Mila now?
Well, if you're in Italy, you can see it on Rai Play, because we secured distribution with Italy, and we are looking at distribution in the US and around the world right now. We have a couple of things. Hopefully, that will land. If in the next, I would say, 6 months or so, we're not able to secure distribution at this point, I'll probably put it on YouTube or something, and or Amazon, and try to promote it ourselves. I didn't do Mila for the money. I don't want a dime out of Mila, so I really don't care about that. I'm looking for to distribute that in through a platform, possibly because of visibility, because I know they would have a way bigger success in reaching hopefully thousands and thousands of people that way than me, or us as Mila putting it on Amazon or YouTube. That's the only reason why I'm holding on to putting it on on YouTube. Um, Hoping that we find like a platform that is interested and believes in the message of against kids caught in the middle of war.
A story like that, it needs to be seen. And especially in today's climate, I think I've been reading things literally like today and yesterday about children stuck in war-torn countries, two in particular that are obviously in the news right now. And so it feels like the message has never been more important. And there's never been a better time for people to be able to see something like Mila. And I look forward to you being able to get it out into the world, because I think it needs to be seen.
Yes, me too. So we're working hard on that, and hopefully that will happen sooner than later. So
I saw that you did a TED talk, and you were talking about basically tricky subject matter, or tackling subjects that are not in the mainstream or the usual types of things content that we see coming out. Have you, since you haven't had that talk at TED, have you had more thoughts about that? How do we approach film studios to get them behind stories that are not the most conventional in their telling or in their subject matter?
Yeah. Well, I think Europe is a way better place for now for filmmakers that have films with like strong themes and sensitive subject matters. In the US is way harder because usually you have like big studios, and big studios want to make money, and difficult films with difficult subject matters are either for young adults or adults, so it's a different target than the broader more conventional uh, um, o- um, audience of children, so they tend to stay away from that. In Europe it's different because the independent approach is more welcomed, and they have ways to actually find funds through film commissions and associations. In France, for example, the CNC is huge at supporting animation. In the US, if you're independent, there is basically nothing. I mean, either you find a financial group that believes in you and they're behind you, but it's like very rare. It's like winning the lottery chance. Or big studios are not really interested in those type of films. They are more commercial type of. But I think things are changing because the audience it's ready, has been ready for many years. I think big studios are kind of behind, and we've seen it with the incredible reaction with Spider-Verse. That was extremely well welcomed by the audience, not just for the incredible storytelling, for the look of it. Arcane, it's another example of pushing, really the look and trying to. They were filming more in a live action ways, and people or Love, Death and Robots. That's from Netflix. The series of shorts that are all kind of R-rated, or PG-13 at least, but they're probably for adults more than kids. So, if you look at the reaction, it's incredible, and that's been pushing finally the industry in a different way. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be for kids, but it's unfortunate that in the average executive mind, I think it's cartoons, it's for kids. We were just looking at the very narrow slice of the pie. I think there is so much more. But I think the incredible series for Spider-Verse from Sony and Arcane and all of those very popular films and TV series are really pushing the conversation in a different direction. Even here in the US, Europe has already been open, and of course, Asia. I mean, Japan. They're doing incredible anime, and they're like, for everybody. No limitations. So I see the future very positive for us. Even here in the US, and I think more opportunities for those type of stories will happen.
I want to go way back. You went to Amblimation from Italy, right? You moved over to London, worked at Amblin, and obviously Amblin evolved into DreamWorks down the line. But I'm curious. I was reading your bio, and I saw something. You were in Italy as a young animation student, and then I'm guessing you got wind through the grapevine that this studio in London, Amblin, is hiring. You could tell us about that?
Yeah, again, look, this sometimes I think life is like almost like a train moving, and you are stations, and you either jump fast on the train or the train goes, right? Sometimes it's like that. You need to and you need to have a little bit of you have to have a lot of courage, but also a little bit of craziness, because you're leaving your own countries. And I know so many friends of mine that are like, oh no, I'm still here, and but for example, for animation Italy, it's a complicated it's when I was a student, there was not much. You could just do a little advertising, the Ferrero, Little Kinder, we're always doing animation, or the cornflakes, those type of very limited, what looking. And then once in a while, they were doing probably a crappy feature, like supported by Europe, but it's unfortunately because I think the best in Italy is Bruno Bozzetto, and he did incredible feature films in the 70s, fantastic. But then, the animation, at least when I came out of school, it wasn't the best time. So, and one thing that really, and I have to say this because as a woman in the industry, it's something that really, I think, helped to shape my path. And again, going back to sometimes things bad happen, but they're happening for a reason, because they're shaping you to go in the right direction, or giving you the strength to go in the right direction. So I was out of school and I was looking for work, and I brought my portfolio to a studio, like a small 10 people studio, usually little studios in Milan, where I'm from. And so the owner looks at my portfolio, and it's half cleaned up because that's what was needed, clean up for stuff. And then the rest is roughs for animation. My dream was becoming an animator. And he says, okay, but I see you have, I don't understand what you want to do because it's a bit mixed. I said, well, I want to be an animator eventually. But you're a woman, women usually do background or they paint, so I was, what? And that really, of course, at the time I was furious. I closed my portfolio and I left. But it helped me understand that if I wanted to work as a woman in the industry, and at least at the time, hopefully now things are better in Italy. I know they are. And then if I wanted to work at a high quality that I wanted to, I needed to leave my country. So that was, the kind of the spark. And then the opportunity came of Amblimation that were finishing Bolto, and so I sent my portfolio, and I was hired as an in-betweener. That, if you don't know, 2D animation is the last position, in between in cleanup of key assistant, and then so on and so on. And it's great because you learn from where you should be. So I was extremely happy, and I moved to London. It was only for 4 months because like you said, Amblimation was closing, moving to DreamWorks, and I decided to becoming DreamWorks to LA, moving to LA.
So there was so you get to London, there's already talk that they're moving to LA.
Yeah. So basically, they were already preparing visas for who was there, who wanted to move, or who they asked, of course, to join. But I was just an in-betweener, just arrived, so they didn't have visas for us. So I went, after the studio closed and moved, I went to Munich Animation when I actually started to animate. I was a junior animator there, working on a feature. And then Warner Brothers was opening in London, back in London, in 95. And so I went to the Bolto premiere, and the manager from Amblimation that stayed in London decided not to join DreamWorks. Was the studio manager for Warner that just opened in Covent Garden. And so I bumped into her at the loo in line, and she said, "Oh, Cinzia, you should send your portfolio. I'm a studio manager in Warner in London." So I did, and I went back to London and I stayed there for a year and a half.
So those are two big not leaps of faith, but those are two big moves to go from Italy to London and then London to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I'm always curious, what were your first impressions of LA?
LA, I was here as a tourist a couple of years before they asked me to join, and I loved it. I mean, I loved the freedom that you had, and the opportunity that anyone had at any age to change themselves to start a new career. This is something I don't know in the UK, but in Italy it's a bit more rigid. It's way more rigid. Like, if you start as an engineer, why would you become a baker? So it's maybe nowadays with social media and such, people are better tools to reinvent themselves. But back in the day, I don't know. I loved that sense of freedom, of people not really caring if you do A, B, or C.
It's interesting. You're not the first person I've spoken to that have shown, what's the word? Basically, people that are unhappy with the state of the industry in Italy. And the way that not necessarily even the studios, or certainly not the talent pool, but the lack of investment from the government in the industry, or the lack of support or resources to the Italian artists.
No, you're totally right. In Italy, unfortunately, they're not believing in the animation as an industry. That's another reason why I left. They always. It's a shame because it's such an incredible country that has foundation in the art. And animation is an art, and it's an incredible art. It's not just it's it's film. You can do so many things with animation. It's so powerful. And I don't understand why they're not supporting the artists that decide to stay there. There are many. They are incredible. They have so many talented people. Many leave, like I did. Many decide to stay. They're not supported by the government. Absolutely not supported by the government. And it's such a shame because Italy, we know, is so creative. There are other industries that are doing way better, fashion, cars and so on, food. And I don't know why they're not supporting. I think film, cinema in general, it's not greatly supported. Animation, don't even talk about it. Yeah, animation, at the beginning, they don't look. Like I said, my daughter is going to Gobelin, and I was walking around Paris with her recently, and we have the random person asking what you're doing, blah blah, and you say, "Oh, I'm going to Gobelin." Everybody knows, every single person, from the guy selling flowers to the lady at the bank, they all know what Gobelin is. When I started in Italy, animation, and I'm sure it's still like that now, when I said, "Oh, I'm an animator," they thought I was the animator for the Club Med, animating, like entertaining the tourist animation type of thing. No clue about what animation was. I hope now is better, but that's the issue, is that it's not supported by the government. They don't believe in animation as a potential huge industry.
It's such a shame, and as you said, like so many, like when I think even back to DreamWorks, it feels like a third of that studio was Italian. And so there's no shortage of talent coming out of Italy. But people die. I think they do feel compelled to leave if they want to make a go of it. And so you make it to LA. You're at DreamWorks. Obviously, I met you there. Prince of Egypt, El Dorado. You were now doing traditional 2D animation, one of the greatest animation studios in the world. Really getting a chance to ply your craft and perfect it, and surrounded by all these incredible artists. Those were special years. There's no doubt. I look back at it very fondly. I do definitely think it was like the second golden age of animation.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. I feel like I knew it at the time, but it's one of those things that it's in hindsight, it's like that was actually truly special. I think that it was around probably the third film that we did was Spirit, and you then you were starting at that point to transition into CG, right?
So yeah, after Pixar came out with Toy Story, of course, that was kind of a shock. It was incredible to go and watch Toy Story. It was like such a non-expected, fantastical other way to do animation. And the studios, of course, looked at that as, okay, we need to transition, we need to explore it, we need to try. But everybody in the 2D department, the animators, most everybody would say were like now with AI, kind of reminds me a little bit of that. They were scared of CG, they would not touch it, and they didn't want to be involved with it. But I always loved to challenge myself, and I saw the potential of CG. So they were starting an internal training program at Dreamers. And I was like, can I be a guinea pig? Can I? So I was, I think there had 2 groups of 4 people each, and I was one of the 4 in the second group. So I started right away, basically one of the first people being trained, and we had 2 months training program. This was the beginning of Spirit, so 2000.
So 2000, something. Yeah, give or take.
I think 2000, yeah, something like that. And so I was training in, we had a long training program for Spirit, thankfully so, because animating at that level horses is not the most simple thing. So we had a great training program for, I think a few weeks. And then I was doing at the same time the CG training. So in Spirit, I was working with James Baxter, that I worked with on El Dorado as well, on Tullio. And I was on the main horse. So I was doing mainly 2D things, but then slowly they implemented CG into the pipeline, and we were asked to do just background horses, so far away, cartoon rendered just with the line, but they were CG. So that was the first. So I was doing 80% 2D and 20% of CG stuff, just, training and learning out. And this was, back in the days, it was the rigs were not what they are today. Nothing was like it was today, but it was the beginning. Um, and then on the next film was Simba. There was kind of the other way around, what I was doing mostly CG, and then I would get the scenes that had interaction between CG and 2D, so I could do both basically. Um, that was quite interesting. Yeah, yeah. And that's it. And then I left and went to Sony after that.
And as a CG animator at this point, now you're full
Yeah,
CG,
at
yeah?
this point, at this point, unfortunately, studios are not even talking about doing 2D,
Yeah.
and they all fall on into CG. So after 9 years of being a 2D animator, I spent 9 years being a CG animator. So I was Sony, and then Disney. Worked for Ken Duncan on one of the Minion special and so on. And then slowly, after a few years of CG in 2012 or something, 11, I think, I started transitioning into storyboard.
And with that transition into story, was directing, that was the goal at that point? You'd switch gears and decided you wanted to direct?
Yeah, and I verbalized that my intention of moving to story and so on, and eventually direct when I was at studios at Disney in particular. But I learned very quickly that the chances of at the time, hopefully things are changing now. A woman with an accent in Hollywood, you want to direct a feature film? I mean, it was going to be hard. Let's say I realized very quickly it was going to be very hard. So another reason why I wanted to do Mila was to show what I could do. I knew it was going to be my business card, basically, doing a short on my own. I didn't know it would take 10 years to print the business card.
But well, no, it's a case of, look, if you can't get someone to hire you to do something, do it yourself, right? And
Exactly.
that
Exactly.
way. It does bring up you've mentioned a couple of times being a woman in animation, and I am curious. Obviously, you met resistance in Italy with gender and that, but how have you found it working in Los Angeles as far as gender inclusivity and how do you think that you are treated differently as a woman working in animation?
So of course it was way better than Italy because I was starting from a very low point, especially after my interview. You're a woman, you should just do paint backgrounds. So I felt in London, I felt absolutely fantastic. I mean, I never had any issues, anything, And I know it goes with luck too. Some people might have a different experiences. Personally, it was incredible. It was so liberating to really go in the studio, Amblimation, and then a Warner in London and be treated equally like everybody else. I was like, it was as a woman, it's like you feel so much lighter. And then when I went to LA too, I mean, I never had really any issues. Looking back, when you are trained as a woman, I think you take on way more than you should, especially back in the days when you don't have a Me Too movement or anything to latch onto. So looking back, I know, male, colleagues were given the chances sooner to get a promotion, for example, way sooner than other women. Not me in particular only, but so I know there was an underlying difference for whatever reason that is still going. I mean, things are better now, but there is so much more that we need to do as a group. And I'm just saying women, but women and men. And look, it's not to justify men, but I know for a fact, talking to friends that are totally open and totally pro women, that just because you don't have the experience, you cannot understand what's happening on a daily basis. It's like, me, when I talk to my friends that are African Americans here, and they explain the daily, subtle or non-subtle at times racism that they get, that me as a white person, I don't get. So how can I understand fully? It's the same for women and men. So I think the most important thing is really being open and have a conversation, explaining, that happened and I felt like that because of that reason. And you would say, I've never thought about it. Yeah, it makes sense. It's just, I think people need to communicate and really talk about, and that would help getting all of those issues out of the way, or at least a bit sooner than not.
Well, it is interesting just the disproportionate amount of men there are to women in animation. I don't know what the numbers are, but I always feel like, it's 80% men, 20% women, or it's felt like that at times. I don't know if that's changing now. I feel like it has shifted a bit. When I worked on Klaus, when that was back in 2019, felt like there was a better balance. I think it's still a male-dominated industry, but it does feel like it's shifting. And I think that, if we go all the way back to the early Disney days where, women cell painted, right? Or they were inkers, they were animators. And so there was a precedent set very early on that there were kind of like roles, for gender assigned roles kind of thing. And that is changing. And I know that there are women that have broken out of that stereotypical kind of situation. But I think there's still a lot of work to do. I think we're making progress, but there's an awful lot more ground that we can cover as far as giving everyone an equal opportunity and voice.
I have a lot of faith in the new generation. If you look at the numbers from schools, 50 or more are women now. So
is that right?
It is. It's inevitable. It's just happening. It will take a few more years. But, it's the workforce would be way more balanced than it has been when we were, in the big studios.
Putting aside like the gender roles that had been assigned like way back, I wonder if there's a reason that animation has just been less appealing as a potential career path historically. Is it because of the types of jobs that are available? Or is there something else going on that generally speaking, women are just steering clear of animation as a path? And I don't know what the answer is, because kids of both genders watch cartoons equally, right? I would argue that it's not like only boys watch cartoons as kids. It feels like it's very even, and yet when it comes to making a career choice or a potential artistic path, the numbers definitely skew more male.
It's a harsh, I think it's in live action too, but it's a harsh career working into the movie industry, because you have crazy deadlines. They can't work around you. You're being hired as an animator. You need to, finish on whatever, art director or visual artist, whatever it is. So, of course, a woman, if she wants to have a family, will need to take breaks, and maternity leave and so on. And now things are better, but back in the days, for example, when I had my son, my daughter too, here in the US, you get 6 weeks, and then you don't have your 6 weeks.
That's it.
I mean,
that's it.
Who decided that? A man. I'm telling you, a woman did not decide that.
Yeah, really.
I'm telling you. And if you have a C-section, you get 8 weeks. That's it. And then you're unemployed, basically. I was at Disney, and they had a huge layoff after both, and I was 6 months pregnant, and I was laid off. And I called the union. I said, "Sorry, I'm 6 months pregnant. They're laying me off." I say, "Look, we can't do anything because it's more than 50% of the department, so there is nothing we can do." All right. So, but so many times in my career, because I wanted a family, so I had 2 kids. So many times in my career, I had to go away, use all my savings, survive, go back to work, find a job after you've been out of the business for a year or whatever. It's never great. And so, because I'm hard headed, because I really wanted to continue my career, and I had a great support system at home, of people loving me and helping me, I made it and I did it. But so many women that are here alone, for example, the family is back in Europe or vice versa. How can you raise 2 kids and then keep up with the deadlines and all that craziness? I mean,
Not only raise a family, but as you said, the studios are uncompromising. They've got a deadline. They don't really care that you've got a problem with daycare. They're getting better, and they do. There is obviously some accommodation, but at the end of the day, if you're trying to have a meaningful career and raise a family and juggle, and if you're from Europe without the support of having grandparents living down the street or whatever, very tricky proposition.
very tricky. And doing a short film with 400 people, very tricky.
Well, you're just a glutton for punishment, though. That's what I think we've established during this conversation. No, I think it's incredibly commendable what you've done. So moving forward now, it's Cinzia the director. We don't talk about Cinzia the storyboard or animator anymore. You're directing now. You are currently working. Am I right? Are you still with Cinesite, or have you gone to another studio?
No, so after I've done Mila, actually, that's why I'm saying Mila was actually my business card, because they loved it. I've been with them already 3 years at that time, I think, 2.5 years, and they had a project that they acquired the IP for, and called Hit Pick, from Berkeley Breathed, that I don't know if you remember him. He's a comic strip artist from the 80s. He won the Pulitzer Prize. He did Bloom County and Opus, and so great. And so he wrote a story called Hit Pig, and they were looking for a director, and they asked me to basically direct. So that was great, and that was about 3.5 years ago at this point, I think. We finished the film. They're looking for distribution, and hopefully they'll find it soon. It's a great film. I had a lot of fun doing it with David Feiss is the co-director. So it was incredible. But I would never had that if I didn't do Mila, ever. Absolutely 100%. If there is something I'm sure about, it's that. And I understand, people want to see what you are capable of and what you can do. And some people, they get to directing through writing or being board artist for 30 years and so on. And that can happen internally to a studio. But when you don't see that happening for you, you need to do something where you can show what you can do, what you can bring to the table. It could be writing a script. In my case, it was I want to direct. So I wrote the short, and I did it, and that was it. And then after, I had an opportunity to develop a feature film for a group in London. So that's ongoing, and we see what that will bring. So that's what I'm going to be doing, hopefully for the next few years. And I love directing. Look, I'm not the best animator. I'm not the best story artist. But I think through Mila, I really learned how to get a group of people and get them comfortable so that they can work at their best ability and have fun through the process if possible. So that's, like you're the captain, but everybody else is like so much better than you are. You're just helping steer everything through a vision that has been established that it's yours. That's what the director should do.
My experience on Mila, you made it an absolute pleasure. Like, it was obviously tricky project in many respects, but
Yeah.
I think that the end result is fantastic. I think it's obviously it's a passion project, and I can't wait to see it get out in the world, and for more people to get a chance to witness that. We got Hit Pig then coming out next year.
Yeah, 24. I hope so. Yeah, I don't know details yet. We're so waiting to hear. Yes.
Okay, and is there anything else that you're promoting right now, or like we'll put links to Mila and to your website and all of that in the description? But is there anything you want to put out in the world?
Not that I can. Hopefully in the new year we'll have some news if everything goes well. But no, nothing else. I keep working with also as a freelance when I'm in between. When you work as a director, of course, you're subject to longer gaps in between projects. So I keep, boarding here and there and consulting on story with studios that I love to do. I love story. I love character development, and so that's really my passion. And then when the opportunity arises, then directing is definitely my forte. I love it. And I'd like to certainly say one more thing that I didn't mention before. Again, I learned so much, and I want to say that the Mila was boarded by Emanuela Cozzi, that is now head of story and like, and she's incredible. I learned so much from her and from so many other people along the way on the project, on Mila, on the studios. So it's important to, it's also a matter of luck to finding people like you, like Emanuela, Andrea, Valerio, and all of them to bring something to Mila's level, And Mila is a musical piece, so also the music is a huge part of our industry. And the composer is Flavio Gargano, that is incredible. So really giving space and opportunities to people to work on something together is really what makes me happy. So I just love it.
Cinzia, thank you so much for doing this. It's been really fascinating. And look, when you can talk about what's next, or you've got something to promote, let us know.
Okay.
We'd love to have another conversation with you down the line, and we can talk about what you're working on currently. That would be exciting. But yes, thanks so much for doing this, and good luck with Hit Pig.
No, thank you so much for this. It's fantastic what you're doing. Grazie. Thank you.